Ever think about what happens when your favorite author's work gets translated?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's more than just like swapping words, right?
It's a whole cultural exchange.
Yeah, it's a whole cultural exchange happening on the page. But what if that exchange gets
Lost in translation.
lost in translation?
Yeah.
That's what we're diving into today.
Ooh, interesting.
A situation involving the Nobel Prize-winning Egyptian author Naguib Mahfouz and his Greek translations.
That is fascinating.
So to help us unpack this whole situation, we have with us an expert on Arabic to Greek translation.
Yes. Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, I'm a translation scholar, and I focus on how Arabic texts, particularly literature, are translated into Greek.
That sounds fascinating and very relevant to our topic today.
It is.
And the person at the center of this whole controversy is a Greek translator named Persa Koumoutsi.
Okay.
She's been really prominent in bringing Mahfouz's work to Greek audiences.
I see.
But now an Arabic to Greek translation scholar, Dr. Hesham Hassan, is raising some serious concerns about the accuracy of her translations.
Oh.
He even goes as far as to call her work a crime against Mahfouz.
That's a pretty strong accusation.
Yeah, a strong statement.
What kind of evidence is he presenting to support that?
So Dr. Hassan has focused his analysis on two of Mahfouz's novels, translated by Koumoutsi, al-Harafish and Awlād Haritna, which is also known as Children of Gebelawi.
Okay.
To fully understand the situation, maybe we should start with some background on Koumoutsi herself.
Yeah, some context would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So Koumoutsi's Greek, but she grew up in Egypt
Okay.
and even attended Cairo University.
Interesting.
Later, she moved back to Greece.
All right.
So you would think this cross-cultural experience would make her uniquely suited to translate Mahfouz, right?
It would seem so.
You would think.
Someone with that background, you would assume, would have a deep understanding of the language and the cultural nuances.
Right.
Yeah.
But Dr. Hassan argues that's not the case. He claims that Koumoutsi took a lot of liberties with Mahfouz's texts,
Okay.
potentially distorting the author's original meaning and message for Greek readers.
So let's look at the evidence he's compiled.
Yeah.
Starting with al-Harafīsh.
Okay, let's dive into al-Harafish.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, there's something interesting about the cover of the Greek translation. It's practically identical to the English translation published by the American University in Cairo.
Interesting. Is he suggesting that she based her translation on the English version instead of the original Arabic?
Yeah, that's what you might think.
Right.
But the book explicitly states it was translated directly from Arabic.
Huh. So it's a bit misleading.
It is, to say the least.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to borrow the credibility of the AUC translation.
Exactly. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh boy.
Dr. Hassan goes on to compare specific passages from the original Arabic text with Koumoutsi's Greek translation, the English translation from AUC, and his own Greek translation.
Okay, so what does that comparison reveal? What kind of liberties are we talking about?
He found that Koumoutsi adds phrases and even entire sentences that are simply not in the original Arabic text.
Wow. That's a pretty significant change.
It is.
I can see why Dr. Hassan is concerned. Are there any, particularly glaring examples that he highlights?
There's one from the very first paragraph of al-Harafish that Dr. Hassan finds particularly troubling.
Oh, let's hear it. What's so problematic about this first paragraph?
Well, Koumoutsi uses the word al-Qidis, meaning the saint, to describe al-Hussein, who's a central figure in Islamic history.
Ah, I see where this is going. Using the term saint to describe an Islamic figure is a major cultural and religious discrepancy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Hassan argues that this shows a fundamental lack of understanding of the source material and its cultural context.
Yeah.
It could easily mislead Greek readers who might not be familiar with the nuances of Islamic beliefs.
It makes you wonder if that was an oversight or a deliberate choice. But either way, it's a significant error, especially for a translator with her supposed experience.
Right. And remember, this is just one example from one paragraph.
Yeah.
It really makes you question the accuracy of the entire translation, and things get even more complicated when we look at her translation of Awlād Haritna.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What did Dr. Hassan discover in Children of Gebelawi?
Well, it seems Dr. Hassan was so surprised by what he found in al-Harafish that he decided to take a closer look at Awlād Haritna to see if there were similar issues.
And were there? Did he find the same kinds of discrepancies in that translation as well?
He sure did. In fact, he argues that the problems in Awlād Haritna are even more significant. But we'll dive into those details in part 2 of our deep dive.
I'm on the edge of my seat. This is really making me think about the responsibility translators have to both the author and the reader.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance, and it seems like in this case, that balance might have been tipped a little too far. So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the discrepancies in Awlād Haritna and explore the potential implications of these mistranslations.
So we left off with some pretty big questions about Koumoutsi's translation of al-Harafīsh.
We did.
Like adding sentences and misrepresenting key figures. Like, that's unsettling.
Right. And remember, Dr. Hassan chose to analyze Awlād Haritna specifically because of the issues he found in al-Harafīsh.
Right, to see if there was a pattern.
Yeah. He wanted to see if those discrepancies were isolated or like part of a larger pattern.
Okay, so let's get into it. What did he uncover in Koumoutsi's translation of Awlād Haritna, or Children of Gebelawi, as it's known in English?
Where Dr. Hassan focuses on the opening passage of the novel.
Okay.
He compares the original Arabic text side by side with Koumoutsi's Greek translation. And guess what?
What?
There are entire lines in the Greek version that simply don't exist in the Arabic original.
Wow, entire lines. That's not just like a minor slip-up. That's a pretty blatant alteration of the text.
Exactly. And we're not talking about just a word or two here and there.
Right.
In one instance, Koumoutsy adds 3 whole lines to the opening passage.
Wow.
Dr. Hassan points out that these additions aren't just like stylistic choices.
Right.
They actually introduce new ideas and interpretations that are not present in Mahfouz's original writing.
So it's not even like she's trying to clarify something or make the text more readable for a Greek audience.
No.
She's actually inserting her own interpretation into the narrative.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
And it raises a lot of questions about the translator's role.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you draw the line between translating a text and rewriting it?
Right. That's a great question, and it's a debate that's been going on in the translation world for centuries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some argue that translation should be as literal as possible, sticking closely to the original text even if it sounds a little awkward or unfamiliar in the target language. Others believe that translators should have more freedom to adapt the text.
Okay.
Make it flow more naturally and resonate with the target audience.
So is there a right or wrong answer?
There's no easy answer, unfortunately.
Okay.
It often depends on the specific text,
Okay.
the languages involved, and the intended audience. But I think most scholars would agree that a translator's primary responsibility is to convey the author's meaning as accurately as possible.
Which is why these additions in Koumoutsi's translations are so troubling.
Right.
They go beyond simply adapting the text.
Yeah.
They actually misrepresent Mahfouz's work.
Exactly. And this raises another important question.
Yeah.
Where were the publishers in all of this?
Ooh, that's a good point.
Did they not have any quality control measures in place to catch these discrepancies?
It seems like there might have been a lack of oversight on both the Egyptian and Greek sides.
It's possible that the publishers placed too much trust in Koumoutsi's reputation
Yeah.
and didn't scrutinize her work as closely as they should have. Or maybe there was a rush to publish the translations,
Yeah.
especially after Mahfouz won the Nobel Prize.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
There was probably a huge demand for his works in translation after he won the Nobel.
Exactly. But regardless of the reasons, it's clear that these errors should have been caught.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the responsibility of publishers to ensure the accuracy and integrity of the translations they release.
It makes you wonder how many other translated works out there might contain similar discrepancies that have gone unnoticed.
It's a sobering thought. It really underscores the importance of critical engagement with translated works.
Yeah.
Readers should be aware of the challenges inherent in translation and be willing to question what they're reading.
This case certainly opens up a whole can of worms.
It does.
But before we get too deep into that, let's switch gears for a moment
Okay.
and look specifically at the cultural implications of Koumoutsi's translation of Awlād Haritna.
Okay, let's shift our focus. What's the cultural significance of this particular novel?
Well, Awlād Haritna is a complex and allegorical work that explores themes of faith,
Okay.
free will, and the search for meaning. It's considered one of Mahfouz's most important and controversial novels
Controversial. Why is that?
because of its allegorical treatment of religious figures and ideas.
I see.
Some critics interpreted the novel as an attack on organized religion, which led to it being banned in Egypt for many years.
Ah, I see. So how did the discrepancies in Koumoutsi's translation play into this already sensitive subject matter?
Well, Dr. Hassan argues that Koumoutsi's alterations, particularly the additions, distort Mahfouz's subtle and nuanced exploration of faith and belief.
It sounds like these alterations could have a significant impact on how Greek readers interpret the novel.
Yeah.
Especially given its controversial history.
Exactly. For example, some of the lines Koumoutsi adds introduce a more explicitly critical tone towards religion than is present in the original Arabic text.
So it's possible that Greek readers are getting a skewed perspective on Mahfouz's views on faith and religion because of these mistranslations.
That's what Dr. Hassan suggests. And this raises even more questions about the ethical responsibility of translators. We'll delve deeper into those questions and explore the potential consequences of these mistranslations in part 3 of our deep dive.
I can't wait to unpack those ethical considerations. It's clear that this case is about much more than just a few misplaced words.
Right.
It's about the power of language to shape our understanding of the world and the responsibility we all have to ensure that that power is used wisely. Welcome back.
So we've been talking about these discrepancies in Persa Koumoutsi's translations of Naguib Mahfouz.
Right, and the implications of those.
And it makes you think about the power of translation.
Yeah, definitely.
How even small changes can have a really big impact on how we understand a work of literature.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that translation is not just a technical process,
Right.
but like a deeply interpretive one. Every choice a translator makes, from word selection to sentence structure, can shape the reader's experience and understanding of the text.
We've seen how those choices, in Koumoutsi's case, have led to some pretty significant distortions of Mahfouz's work.
Yeah.
Especially in Awlād Haritna.
Yeah, and that raises a lot of questions about translator ethics and responsibility. I mean, if a translator can add entire lines,
Right.
change the tone, and potentially misrepresent the author's views, where do we draw the line?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, for
Yeah.
sure. So let's delve into those ethical considerations.
Okay.
What are some of the key principles that guide ethical translation practices?
Well, one of the most fundamental principles is fidelity to the source text.
Okay.
This means that the translator should strive to convey the author's meaning as accurately and faithfully as possible without adding, omitting, or distorting the content.
That sounds pretty straightforward, but I imagine it's not always easy in practice.
Yeah, you're right. Translating is a balancing act.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding equivalent words in another language.
Right.
It's about capturing the nuances of the original text.
Right.
The author's style, the cultural context, and so on.
Yeah. So how does a translator navigate those complexities while remaining faithful to the source text?
It requires a deep understanding of both the source and target languages,
Okay.
as well as a sensitivity to cultural differences. A good translator is like a cultural mediator, bridging the gap between two worlds.
And in this case, it seems like that bridge might have crumbled a bit.
Yeah.
Dr. Hassan argues that Koumoutsi's translations,
Right.
particularly of Awlād Haritna, stray too far from the original text and misrepresent Mahfouz's intentions.
And that misrepresentation, as we discussed, could have significant implications,
Right.
especially given the controversial nature of Awlād Haritna.
Exactly. This novel explores complex themes of faith, doubt, and the search for meaning, and it's been subject to various interpretations and even censorship over the years.
Yeah.
So when a translator introduces their own biases or interpretations, it can further complicate an already complex and sensitive work.
Absolutely. Greek readers who are encountering Mahfouz through Koumoutsi's translations might be getting a skewed perspective on his views,
Right.
especially on religion. And that can have ripple effects on how his work is received and understood in a different cultural context.
So what can be done to prevent these kinds of situations in the future? I mean, short of everyone learning Arabic and reading Mahfouz in the original, what measures can be taken to ensure the accuracy and integrity of translations?
Well, for starters, publishers need to take a more active role in quality control.
Okay.
They should invest in qualified translators with a proven track record, and they should implement rigorous review processes that involve multiple readers and perhaps even subject matter experts.
That sounds like a good first step. But what about the readers? What role can we play in ensuring that we're getting accurate and faithful translations?
Readers need to be more critical and discerning.
Okay.
Don't just take a translation at face value.
Right.
Do your research, read reviews, compare different translations if possible, and be aware that translation is an interpretive act, not just a mechanical one.
That's great advice. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's safe to say that translation is a powerful force. It can open up new worlds and perspectives, but it can also distort and misrepresent if not handled carefully and ethically.
Absolutely. And this case, with all its complexities and controversies, is a reminder that we all have a role to play in ensuring that translations are accurate, respectful, and true to the author's voice.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of translation and its ethical challenges. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of ideas and information.